So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita and second chapter, text 72. And it says, Esa Brahmi Stiti Artha Nainam Prapya Vimuyate Stit Vasyam Antakale Pi Brahma Nirvanam Richati. And the English translation is, that is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. So what is being referred to here when it says that is the way? Well, the previous verse says a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, meaning material desires, not spiritual desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. And then this verse today says that is the way of spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada writes, one can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second, or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Tatvamga Maharaj attained this state of life just a few minutes before his death by surrendering unto Krishna. Nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. According to Buddhist philosophy, there is only void after the completion of this material life. But Bhagavad Gita teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the gross materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end his materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic death. I'm sorry. There is another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There is no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord, since both of them are on the absolute plane. To be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. Okay, let me read that again. There is no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord. Okay? Since both of them are on the absolute plane, to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, there are activities of sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world, there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman. And one who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God. Brahman is just the opposite of matter. Therefore, Brahmi Stiti means not on the platform of material activities. Devotional service to the Lord is accepted in the Bhagavad Gita as the liberated states. Sagunam samatitya itam brahmabhuyaya kalpate. Therefore, Brahmi Stiti is liberation from material bondage. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakura has summarized the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as being the contents for the whole text. In the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matters are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given as the contents for the complete text. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the matter of its contents. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jai. So it says, Esa Brahmis Titi Partha Nainam Prapya Vimuchyate. Stitvasyam Antakalepi Brahma Nirvana Richyate. So there's some very nice Sanskrit words here when it says, Esa Brahmi, this spiritual situation. Once you achieve, once you become free of bewilderment and you're situated in Brahma Nirvana, the spiritual kingdom of God. In other words, that is the way of spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. And as we said, when it says that is the way, it's referring to the previous verse. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, these are material desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. So this is a peace formula. Several places Krishna gives the peace formula. At the end of the 5th chapter also, he gives the peace formula where he says, Bhaktaram Yagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Yatfamam Santam Richati. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So these two verses are all about peace. 5th chapter, 29th verse, and 2nd chapter, 72nd verse. All right, so we should live a spiritual and godly life. That should be our goal. And then, if we have a spiritual and godly life, we will no longer be bewildered by whatever happens in the material world. Why? Because we know Krishna is the controller of everything. Sarva Karana Karanam. That means Krishna is the controller of everything. Therefore, nothing can happen without the sanction of Krishna. There's no such thing as accidents. Nothing can happen without the sanction of Krishna because he's the controller of everything. Sarva Karana Karanam. So, if one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of gods. Well, what does he mean by situated thus situated. That is, one is living a spiritual and godly life, and therefore he's not bewildered anymore. And just like in the previous verse, it says, a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification. Now let's talk about that because we're hearing that uh, in many different places. This giving up all desires for sense gratification. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you give up all desires. You just give up all desires for sense gratification. But you can have an infinite desires for Krishna consciousness, for pleasing Krishna. Let's put it like that, to be precise. You can have infinite desires for pleasing Krishna, but we have to give up all desires for sense gratification. That is, for illicit sex and wanting to be glorified and having false ego. All those things are related to sense gratification. And who lives free from desires, well, free from all material desires, but not spiritual desires. We should have plenty of spiritual desires to please Krishna. Who has given up all sense of proprietorship? Well, uh, everything belongs to Krishna. Sarvakara Lakananam. He is the proprietor of everything. So therefore, there's no such thing as, oh, I'm a proprietor. And the proof that we're not the proprietor is that we use everything in Krishna's service. Now we have given up the sense of proprietorship. If we think, well, no, this is for me, and this other thing over here is for Krishna, then you have not given up all sense of proprietorship. Everything in our life should be given up as belonging to Krishna and used only in Krishna's service. That means cars and houses and 401ks and whatever. Everything should be used to please Krishna. That's how you give up all sense of proprietorship. You can have things, right? But all these things that we have and we've achieved, it should all be used in the service of Krishna. At the same time, we should be devoid of false ego. Such a person can have real peace. So people who have all these desires for sense gratification, they don't have peace. And they get the sense gratification, but it's short-lived. And then they're hankering again. They're never really satisfied. They might have a lot of money, but it's never enough. They want more money. One time I was speaking to this devotee, and he had a portfolio of $2 million in stocks. So when he told me that, I said, well, why don't you just sell all your stocks and you can retire? $2 million is a lot of money. He said, it's not enough. And the way he said it is like scared me. He said, it's not enough. And you know what happened? He lost it all. I mean, it's the stock market. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. Sometimes you make good investments in the stock market, sometimes you make bad investments. There's no guarantee that you're always going to make money in the stock market. So we should all have a spiritual and godly life. And after attaining that, we will not be bewildered by anything. We'll have full faith in Krishna. Not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. So, therefore, we're not afraid. We know whatever is happening, Krishna has somehow or other ordained it, and it must be his his purpose. So we will be very patient and see, what is Krishna's desire. If one is thus situated even at the hour of death, in other words, always having a spiritual and godly life and not being bewildered, if one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God, meaning you're not going to forget Krishna, even at the moment of death. You're going to remember Krishna, contrary, because you have been thinking of Krishna all throughout your life. So that means that you have a very good chance of thinking of Krishna at the moment of death. Okay. And Prabhupada writes, he says, one can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second. Or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Well, what fact are we talking about? The fact is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's in our heart. He's the controller of everything. And even though our material body is going to die, we are not disturbed by it because we know that we have an eternal soul. Therefore, even at the moment of death, we are always thinking of Krishna. But to be able to do that, you have to practice throughout your life, Krishna consciousness. Then it's not difficult to think of Krishna at the moment of death. So it says here in the purport, it is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Katvanga Maharaj attained this state of life just a few minutes before his death. Now, Katvanga Maharaj helped the Devas defeat the Asuras. And the Devas were so happy for what he did. He was a very, very chivalrous, person who fought the Devas. Fought the Asuras and defeated them. So the Devas said, okay, look, whatever you want, we'll give you. You want beautiful wives, you want properties, you want gold, we'll give you anything you want. He said, well, I'm not sure about that. He said, what do you mean you're not sure? We're going to give you all these things. Well, but wait a minute, you have to answer a question first. And the Devas said, well, what question do you have? He said, how long will I live to enjoy these things? So the Devas looked up in their books and they said, you're only going to live another 10 minutes. He said, what? He said, okay, I don't want anything. And he went right away and completely surrendered to Krishna, knowing that he was going to die so quickly. Right? So he asked a good question: how long am I going to live to enjoy these things? And they said, well, it's only 10 more minutes. That's a good question to ask. Let's say you hit the jackpot, $20 million jackpot, but how long are you going to live to enjoy it? It's rather, we should always ask that question. And because we could die at any moment. Therefore, we should always be Krishna conscious and not be crazy for money. Money will come, money will not come. But our Krishna consciousness should always come. Our Krishna consciousness should be the main purpose of our life. Okay, so Katvanga Maharaj, he helped the Devatas defeat the Asuras. And the Devatas said, we'll give you anything you want. And he said, okay, but answer one question before you give me anything. And And the Deva said, okay, what's your question? He said, how long am I going to live to enjoy these things? And they looked him up in their book of life and death, and you only have 10 minutes left in your life. Right away, he said, I don't want anything. And he went and surrendered himself completely to Krishna. So that was a good question to ask, right? So it says here, it is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. And what the fact is, one may not attain. The fact was that you should understand how long you're going to live to enjoy things. So uh, Gadvanga Maharaj then immediately went and surrendered completely to Krishna. So surrendering unto Krishna is the best thing we can do in our life. Okay, so there's this word nirvana. Now, what does nirvana mean? It means ending the process of materialistic life. Why don't you look up in the dictionary what they say nirvana? There's a different the dictionary has a different definition for it. That's why all the mundane dictionaries don't actually explain words correctly. What does it say?
Yes, all nonsense.
What?
It gives me a different.
No, what does it say? Just say it.
Is a concept of Indian religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and Sikhism. The extinguishing of the passions, which is the ultimate state of.
What? What does it say?
It is to be a state of perfect quietude, freedom, highest happiness, as well as the liberation from the attachment and worldly suffering, and the ending of samsara, the round of existence.
Well, that's close to the real definition. Nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. So read that again. What does it say?
All Indian religions assert it to be a state of perfect quietude, freedom, highest happiness, as well as the liberation from attachment and worldly suffering, and the ending of samsara, the round of existence.
Okay, samsara means the cycle of birth and death. Yeah, so it's very close. So nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. According to the Buddhist philosophy, there is only void after the completion of this material life. But Bhagavad Gita teaches differently. Actual life begins after completion of this material life. For the gross materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end his materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one is fortunate, becomes if one is fortunate if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. So Brahma means spiritual, and Nirvana means what? Ultimate happiness. Huh? Yeah. So Brahma Nirvana is the ultimate happiness. There is no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord. And that's a very good statement. We are all trying to engage in devotional service of the Lord, right? So that means that there's no difference between devotional service to the Lord and the kingdom of God. So we're living with Krishna when we're engaging in Krishna's service to Krishna. To Krishna, since both of them are on the absolute plane, meaning the kingdom of God and devotional service. Since both of them are on the absolute plane, to be engaged in a transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. That's a huge statement. In the material world, there are activities of sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world, there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman, or the spiritual worlds. And one who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God. Brahman is just the opposite of matter. Therefore, Brahmi Stiti means not on the platform of material activities. So Brahman means spiritual. Brahman is just the opposite of matter. Therefore, Brahmi Stiti means not on the platform of material activities. Devotional service of the Lord is accepted in the Bhagavad Gita as the liberated stage. Saganam samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Therefore, Brahma Stiti is liberation from material bondage. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has summarized this second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as being the contents for the whole text. In the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matters are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given as contents for the complete text. Thus end the Bhaktivinoda purports to the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of its contents. Hare Krishna. So, are there any questions? Any questions anyone would like to ask about this wonderful purport? Well, I might have a question here. It says here, according to Buddhist philosophy, there is only void after the completion of this material world. But Bhagavad Gita teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the gross materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end this materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic life. Now, most people don't believe that. Most people believe you only live once, and when you die, there is nothing. Both of those statements are wrong. But both of those statements are believed by the majority of people in this world. Most people believe you only live once, and when you die, there's nothing. And to their shock, when they die, they'll see, wait a minute, I thought there was nothing, but I'm seeing Yamaraj, and I'm seeing the, Narak, and now I realize that I shouldn't have wasted my life believing things that are false. See, now this is the real problem. There are many false beliefs. Some of them even are in churches and believe and in synagogues. They're teaching things that are false. You have to come to Bhagavad Gita to hear the absolute truth. Even in the Bible, there are things that are false. So, I mean, the main thing that's false is you only live once, and when you die, you're going to be judged, and some people will go to hell forever, and some people will live in heaven forever. that is not correct. And first of all, you don't only live once. You have an eternal soul, and as long as you don't become Krishna conscious, you keep taking birth, and in every birth you have a chance to be Krishna conscious. Or if you're very sinful, then you fall back into the animal or insect world, and you have to wait thousands or millions of years before you come back to the human form again. So there's no question of dying. Yes, your body dies, but your soul never dies. So because the soul is eternal, if you're bewildered, you could eternally stay in the material world. And if you're realized, self-realized, then you can go back to the spiritual world eternally. Both ways, you're eternal. But the best thing is to go back to the spiritual world eternally. Staying in the material world eternally means you're just going to be suffering in every birth, and you're not even guaranteed the birth of a human being. So when it says in this verse, that is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. So, what does it mean? It means that a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, meaning material desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. So tonight we should uh, take take away one point and meditate on it. That is, when all desires for sense gratification are given up, then only can we attain real peace. When all desires for sense gratification are given up, then only we can attain real peace. This should be something we write down and the date and meditate on this. That when we give up all desires for sense gratification, then alone we can attain real peace. Haribol. Are there any questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat,
Haribol.
Dandavat Pranam. Uh, I
Yes.
just, I'm, I am a little bit confused when I listen to this statement. How can, how can one leave all the desire for sense gratification, especially when he's in Grihastha? How will he take care of a family when there will be no desire of any material things? I'm a little confused, Maharaj.
Well, when it says, when all desires for sense gratification are given up, so that doesn't mean you're giving up all things material. You're
Mm-hmm.
giving up the use of those things for sense gratification. But all those things that you need to live, you're
Mm-hmm.
using in the service of Krishna. You're
Mm-hmm.
not giving up. You're not giving up the things that you need to live. You're giving up the use of those things selfishly for sense gratification. You understand?
Yes. Thank you. Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
It requires some knowledge to use everything in your life in the service of Krishna. That's why, like, for example, you let's say you buy a car, okay, but the main reason you bought the car is so you can come regularly to the temple, right? If you buy the car to go to a uh, a place where there's gambling, or to a baseball game, or uh, a party where there's liquor and things like that, then that's sinful. That's not using the car correctly. If you use the car to come to the temple and to go to programs where there's Krishna consciousness in association with devotees, that's the correct use of the car. And okay, you can use the car also to go to work, to earn a living, and you use some of the earnings that you make and there's donations for the temple. So, that means you're using the car correctly and you're using money correctly and so forth. So, uh, we're not saying that you should artificially, or not artificially, that you should give up the car, give up the house. No, you can have all these things as long as you're practicing Krishna consciousness. And that means that all these things are used in the service of Krishna.
Uh,
Uh, yeah, go ahead.
Maharaj, I have another question. Like whenever I go for a service to the temple and whenever I serve the devotees, it gives me immense pleasure. But then I think twice, like why I am doing it, because of my pleasure, or because of Krishna's pleasure? Because I feel very happy, but I don't think about Krishna. That is, if he is happy, it give me the happiness whenever I'm with the association of the devotees and I serve Krishna. So, am I thinking in a right way, or is it also a sense gratification?
Well, when you're actually serving the deities, do you
Yes,
feel happy?
very happy.
Okay. So do you think Krishna feels happy?
I think so. But my so but my con but I get bewildered because is it I? Why I'm thinking about myself? Why the first thought is not about the Krishna? Why first thought is about myself, that I am feeling happy? I am doing this kirtan because I will feel happy. It is always I, not Krishna. So is it sense gratification, or is it my anarthas? What is it?
Well, when are you meditating on Krishna when you serve him?
When I
Or you're
serve
just,
devotees?
no, when you serve Krishna and with the
Yes,
deities?
yes, of course,
Are you
yes,
meditating on Krishna when you're serving
yes,
him on the altar? Well, that's Krishna
yes,
consciousness, but it also gives you
okay,
happiness.
yes,
You don't come out, crying and miserable after serving the deities. You become happy. Why? Because you made Krishna happy.
okay, okay, okay. Yeah, good to know. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Haribol, Haribol.
Haribol.
Now, how do you know if Krishna is happy? And that's the question. Well, Krishna is going to be happy if you're thinking of him and serving him. He's going to be happy. Or for me, with love and devotion, uh, what does it say? Or for me, with love and devotion, uh, a fruit or water or something like that, and Krishna is satisfied. So you're making him happy, and then you're going to be happy also. If you don't serve Krishna nice, or if you forget to serve Krishna, and and just become a sense gratifier, then you're not going to be happy. And you're not going to make Krishna happy either. But just even if you only offer an apple to Krishna with love and devotion, he'll be happy and you'll be happy also. In fact, when Prabhupada first started preaching in America, he didn't have hardly any money. So he would, the prasadam at that time, this is in the beginning in New York and San Francisco, he would cut an apple into 6 or 8 pieces, and that was a prasadam. After the lecture, he would hand out pieces of apple. He didn't have any money, but he was still giving out prasadam. You know, it was an apple, a piece of an apple. It was not even a whole apple. But see, he was doing it with love and devotion, and eventually Krishna gave him millions and millions of dollars and so many devotees and so many temples, you know. But when he started out, all he had was like one apple and he cut it into little pieces, and that was the prasadam. So therefore, we should offer everything to Krishna. Food, thoughts, uh, anything that we're doing, we should first pray to Krishna so that we can properly serve him and offer the result to the Lord. And then he'll offer it back as his prasadam. And then the Lord is pleased and you are pleased. Okay. Okay, so it says here, a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification. Yeah, how do you give up all desires for sense gratification? You give up all sense gratification desires and have only desires to please Krishna. That's the way you give up sense gratification or desires for sense gratification. You replace the desires for sense gratification with desires to please Krishna. And who lives free from desires? What kind of desires? Desires for sense gratification. You can't live free from desires. But when you substitute desires, uh, 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 material desires with desires for Krishna, you still have desires, but now they're pure desires, right? And who has given up all sense of proprietorship. Yes, we understand that everything belongs to Krishna. Therefore, everything should be used in the service of Krishna. And is devoid of false ego. Yeah, we should understand that I am not the doer, and I am completely surrendered to Krishna. And I'll only follow the instructions of Guru and Krishna. I won't act on my own, but I will always take this instruction from bona fide gurus and Krishna, right? And who is devoid of false ego. Well, I'm not the controller. Krishna is the controller. And I will only do those things that are pleasing to Krishna. Now you don't have a false ego anymore. False ego means, well, you know, I did this and I did that, and this belongs to me. No, everything in my life belongs to Krishna, and I should use everything in Krishna's service. Such a person can attain real peace in that type of attitude or culture of Krishna consciousness. Okay, so I think we're ready to take rest tonight, unless there are any more questions. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. And please have very nice dreams tonight about Krishna. And I'll see you 11 hours from now. Hare Krishna.